checking things off.
That's good to me. I got
Are you
the,
okay with that?
I got the
Lots of people.
I'll miss you.
hard copy.
I love you.
Right in your phone on my desk. Oh.
With all my notes from the last hearing.
Uh-huh.
Well, you'll remember everything.
You won't say.
That's right.
Are you all set?
Yes.
Can I help you?
Okay.
You're all set?
Not set.
Okay.
Almost.
I think
Okay, ready?
Yes, sir.
Good evening and welcome to the February 7th, 2024 meeting of the Board of Zoning Appeals. The first item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. We'll ask the audience to join. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The next item is attendance. Mr. Day, would you please be so kind to do that?
Mr. Mundy.
Present.
Kathy Postlethwaite.
present.
Jocelyn Hinshaw.
Present.
Chris Lake.
Present.
Josh Bedore.
Present.
All present.
Thank you. The next item is election of officers. We had officers elected at the January meeting, but without a full board. And so we essentially put in place a placekeeper government, if you will. So tonight's selection will be for real. We have 3 positions that need to be filled. The first is the secretary. Mr. Day, I assume you are still willing to serve in that role.
Yes, happy to.
I would like to nominate Michael Day for secretary.
Second.
Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you, Mr. Day.
You're welcome.
The next position is the vice chair for the Board of Zoning Appeals. Is there a nomination for that role?
I'd like to nominate Chris Lake.
Thank you. Is there a second for that? Is
Second.
there any other nominations? Hearing none, all those in favor of putting Chris Lake into that position indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you, Mr. Lake, for serving that role.
No problem.
The last is for the chairman of the Board of Zoning Appeals. Is there a nomination for that role, please?
I would nominate Kathy Postlethwaite.
Thank you, Mr. Lake. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Henshaw. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, all those in favor of Kathy Postlethwaite taking this role, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you. Congratulations, Mrs.
you.
Postlethwaite, and your willingness to serve, and I will exchange chairs with you.
It's official. All right, thank you, Mr. Monday. I would like, on behalf of my colleagues here on the Board of Zoning Appeals, to thank you for your service to the town of Zionsville over these many years. And I hope I can demonstrate half of the competency which you have demonstrated in this role over the years in which I've served. So thank you.
Thank you. You will do great.
All right, next item on the agenda is the approval of the January 3rd, 2024 minutes. And they were included in the packet. Are there any additions or corrections to those minutes?
Nope.
Nope.
No?
I move to approve the January 8th minutes of the meeting.
Thank
I'm
you,
sorry,
Mr.
January
Monday.
3rd.
Thank you, Mr. Monday. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Lake. Any further discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Same sign. Okay, thank you. Just as a reminder for the board members, we will be using the new form that was part of our training thank you. We will be using the new form that was developed when we had our training, so you will be seeing that as we make our decisions this evening. All right, first item on the on our agenda for continuance is item number 2023-59-SE, Midwest Landscape Industries, and item number 2024-01-DSV, also Midwest Landscape Industries. They have asked for a continuance. Mr. Price, do you have comments?
Thank you and good evening. Matt Price here for Midwest Landscaping. Yes, we have obtained some relatively new information pertaining to the project and the history of the property as late as Monday of this week, which I think will help us work through some of the questions raised in the staff reports. We're actually meeting with staff tomorrow afternoon. We've had some neighborhood outreach already, which has gone really well. But I have a follow-up meeting with the Neighboring Homeowners Association on February 13th of next week, which to provide them an update on on our petition. So this continuance would allow additional time to meet with staff and follow up with those neighborhood meetings, and we'll be ready to go at the March meeting.
All right, thank you, Mr. Price. Are there any questions by any of the board members for Mr. Price?
I move to continue petition 2023-59-SE and 2024-01-DSV to the March, do we know what day that is? March 6th board meeting, BZA meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Lake. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Hinshaw. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor of continuing 2023-59-SE and 2024-01-DSV, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Same sign. Okay, thank you. They'll be continued to the next meeting. Thank you, Mr. Price. All right, the next item of continued business is, and I will ask our IT person in the back if we have anybody online. And no one? All right. If anyone appears and would like to comment, will you please let us know? Thank you. All right. Docket number 2023-53-DSV. S. Wagner, that's 7880 Circle Drive. Development Standards Variance, Section 194-097 and Section 194-082. An accessory building in the Rural General Agricultural Zoning District exceeding the accessory square footage limitations and reducing the front yard setback requirement. Is Mr. Wagner here with us this evening? Okay, thank you. First, we'll have the staff report.
Ms. Chairman, if
Yes.
I may,
Please.
you've continued the special exception. I wonder if it would be good for the record to continue the development standards variance for the Midwest Landscaping Industries as well.
We continued both.
They were both in the,
Did you do
My
the
motion had both petition
Right.
numbers in it.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, staff report, please.
Looking for staff.
Staff, yes. So as we discussed, this one was continued from the January 3rd meeting. Happy to go back through the staff report, but really we're looking at two variance requests. One for section 194097, which allows the accessory square footage to exceed the primary structure square footage. The second variance request would reduce the setback. The standard is 70 feet from the center of the road or 20 feet from right-of-way, whichever one's greater. In this case, it would be 70. The request is to reduce that from 70 down to, let me get on the site plan, down to 55 feet. And as we discussed in January's meeting, there was two primary questions that were asked. I've got the answers to those. Question number one, is there a commercial component to this request? Is there any operational, business operational aspects that are happening at the property? Question two, are we expanding a legal non-conforming use? Question number one about the commercial components. I talked with Shane. I think we're both on the same page. There are no commercial components happening. There's no employees showing up. There's no customers showing up. He was kind enough to disclose where he picks up his products. So as far as his distributors and everything like that, it's all off-site. So there is no real commercial component to this. The second question, are we expanding a legal non-conforming use? The answer to that is yes. This building was actually built, I believe, in 1990, in the 1990s.
Very early, like, more like 89, 90.
So we look at this as a legal non-conforming use, right? In its current state, it is legal non-conforming. So by expanding this, obviously you are expanding a legal non-conforming use. However, if you were to approve the variance, it would then be compliant and it would lose its legal non-conforming status. It would be a compliant building. So I think I've answered the two questions that were brought up from the previous meeting. I'm happy to answer anything else that y'all may have. Otherwise, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Any questions for staff on this petition?
So the staff report from January still is unchanged with those two questions answered then.
Yeah, so staff position, number 1 and 2, will the request negatively impact the surrounding property as far as the health, safety, general welfare of the community? No, it will not. There's similar uses. Will the request negatively impact property values? I can't say that it will. But number 3, hardship. For us, hardship, we have to look at two factors. Is it more than just an economic issue? And is it self-created? And in our position, we could have put that addition somewhere else that would have eliminated the setback requirement issue. We also could have increased the height of the lower section. If you see in the top left corner, you could increase the height of the existing structure there to accommodate for the trailers that he has purchased. So because of what we feel like are the self-created aspects of the request, we are not favorable for this variance request for either the setback or the area. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Whose road is that in front of their property? Is that a Boone County road? Is that a Zionsville road?
Are you talking about Circle Drive? If you look on the site plan on the right corner of the screen, I think it's Circle Drive.
Yeah, it's whatever heads right out. It's right, whatever's right in front of those garages. Yeah, it's a Circle Drive. Circle Drive.
Circle Drive.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have the answer right in front of me.
Okay. Is there any concern that if that road were appropriately widened, that we would be causing any problems that would hamper things? Since it's a fairly narrow road, probably doesn't meet what would be a new standard Boone County road section.
You know, without having everything in front of me, I think that's a fair assessment. You know, a standard right-of-way would be, you know, just for a collector road or some average would be 30 feet generally on either side. I think that's a fair assessment. I unfortunately didn't look into that.
Okay.
So I don't have all that in front of me.
All right.
Any further questions? Okay,
You,
Mr. Wagner, if you'll come up to the podium, and you have any further information that you think would be useful?
I was just going to answer on that road question as far as that goes. The barn.
Would you
it's
please,
gonna-
before you start, would you give your name and address, please, for the
Oh,
record?
yes. Shane Wagner, 7880 Circle Drive, Zionsville, Indiana 46077.
Thank you.
I was just going to say the addition that we're putting on is going to line up alongside the other barn. So, I mean, just so you're aware, I guess.
Anything else that you'd like to,
Nope, we just, we need it just to put some trailers in there, clean up the property, and kind of stated all that last time. So I believe that's really all I got, unless you got questions for me.
any questions for the petitioner from the board?
You've seen the staff report, so you know, and that was just, Mr. Smith just explained as well, the last part of that, and that is the hardship clause, which we must consider. And if we find that it is not, does not create an unnecessary hardship, our responsibility is to deny this. So I think if you have anything that you can say relative to whether or not this will cause an unnecessary hardship, now is the time to say it.
Well, the hardship for us is going to be maintaining, like the fifth wheel camper that we have that's very large and won't fit into the barn. Really just cleaning up the property. You can see there's a bunch of stuff that's parked outside. We'd like to get that stuff underneath the roof. And at that point, we just need more space. So that is a hardship. We're just trying to get the place cleaned up, make it look a little better as far as that goes. And making the first building taller just doesn't make economic sense for us at all. So, yep, that's all I got.
Any other questions for the petitioner? So are we satisfied with the three questions that we need to ask about whether this, either of these, the front yard setback or the increased accessory square footage, whether they are injurious to the public health, safety, morals, welfare, and so on, or whether they are going to be affecting substantially in an adverse manner the neighboring properties, or whether there is an underlying unnecessary hardship that will be put upon the petitioner if we don't pass these.
Did have one more thing. Sorry to interrupt, but just want to make sure you guys know that the neighborhood does support it as well. We've talked to Eagles Nest. She was online last time, said it was totally fine, that they didn't have a problem with it. And then obviously half of that neighborhood is owned by other family members of ours or mine. So they're okay with it as well, if that makes any difference.
We ready to make some kind of.
Is there any other reason that we're not seeing on these maps that it can't be located elsewhere where it doesn't require a setback?
I mean, yeah, we could set it back, but it's still we could put it on the back side of the barn. I mean, that's an option. It's just there's already driveway and everything there. There's already asphalt there. But it still doesn't help us out with the variance on the square footage, so.
Right.
Anyone with thoughts about a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that I move the docket 2023-53-DSV development standard variance to exceed the accessory square footage for an accessory building at 7880 Circle Drive, Zionsville, be denied as presented and described.
Second.
All right. Any discussion about the motion?
I would say that it's the hardship which has not been demonstrated, and I don't think that we have an option. I don't see a way of doing it any other way.
Okay. Any further discussion? Agreed. All right. All in favor of the motion as presented by Mr. Monday, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so that variance is denied. Anything on the variance number 2?
I move that docket 2023-53-DSV development standard variance to reduce the front yard setback at 7880 Circle Drive, Zionsville, be denied as presented and described.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Lake. Additional discussion? All in favor of the motion as presented by Mr. Monday, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion is denied. Thank you, Mr. Wagner. All right, going on to the next petition. The next item on the agenda is new business, docket number 2023-54-SE, 3785 South Indianapolis Road, West in Lebanon. Special exception to permit a single-family dwelling in the rural light industrial zoning district, I-1. So we'll start with the staff report. Is Mr. West here? Someone representing? Good.
Yes, ma'am.
Staff
So,
report.
as you mentioned, this is a special exception. Benjamin is here at the meeting as well. This is a special exception to section 194082, specifically to allow a single-family residence on an I-1 zone parcel. This property, I believe, Benjamin, you can correct me if I'm wrong, the house was on this parcel, I believe it was built in 1965. They've lived on the land until recently. They had a house fire. Had the house fire only damaged 2/3 of the structure, or had the house fire not severely damaged the foundation of the existing structure, he would have been allowed to rebuild his house with no issues. Because the fire more or less completely destroyed the home, severely damaged the foundation, he had to apply for a demo permit, remove the existing structure, and by doing that, he eliminated the legal non-conforming status of his existing house. So in order to rebuild his home on a I-1 zone parcel, Benjamin's having to request for the special exception in order to get that approved. Let me forward my slides. You'll see on the screen, to the left is the previous existing home. And you'll see on the right, the picture on the right is a circle of where it was located at on the property. Obviously, as I mentioned, it's not going to go back in the same footprint. It's going to be just a little off from where it was at. But here is what, here's the site plan, and here is what it'll look like from the left and from the right. The only other thing I want to point out on the site plan, if you look to the right, it shows, for some reason, they titled it as an existing house. That's not a second existing house. That is a 6-car garage. Benjamin can speak to that as well, but it is not a second primary. I'm not sure why they identified it that way. That being said, staff, we do not feel like this will be injurious to the public health and safety of the community. We don't think it'll negatively impact the surrounding area. And because there are other legal non-conforming single-family residences in that area, we think the proposed use will be consistent with the character of the district. And for that reason, staff is supportive of this request.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Smith. Are there questions for the staff?
Nope.
I do have one question, and I can't make out from this site plan. What is the distance between the new structure and the property line? There's one corner there. Is that 13 feet, or what is?
My PowerPoint is a little blurry, but I can pull it up.
Looks like 12 foot.
Yeah, say 12.
12 feet?
Yeah.
12 feet? Okay. That's what I get for not wearing my glasses. 12 feet, there you go.
And so you're indicating that the structure that is marked existing house is actually a garage, an existing garage?
Yes, ma'am. And so the house that's marked existing house is a 6-car garage. The square that's identified as the new structure is where the new house is going to be placed.
Okay, thank you.
Very similar layout to the first house that was there. Not exactly the same footprint, but very similar.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Smith.
You're welcome.
Mr. West, if you would come to the podium, please, and give your name and address and.
My name is Benjamin West. My address is 3785 South Indianapolis Road, Lebanon. And actually for some reason, that picture, the parcels were not connected, and I did not know that when I purchased the home. And the lady that I purchased it from, she passed away a month after I purchased it. And one of the parcels was owned by her daughter, and one was owned by her son. And the distance, the 12 feet is actually the one parcel line, but there's a triangle parcel behind it that shows up on some of the site plans, but not on some of the site plans. And I actually own the other parcel, and it's a distance to where I believe it's Case Machinery over to the Whitestown line is 58 feet, and it's 70 feet to the other, and 3 feet from Indianapolis Road. And the total property is 2.27 acres according to the county. Or that's what they had when I got from the recorder's office.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I just scaled it in my PDF, and it's actually closer to 15 foot.
Okay.
I don't know what it says, because it looks like 12 foot, but it scales 15,
Right.
given that you can read the 72 on the other, or 73 on the other dimension.
All right. Do you have any further information that you want to share with the board?
Well, that for some reason that I just don't know why that drawing, if you measure straight over, it's 58 feet to the business behind it. And I just don't honestly know why it shows. I think it's just that parcel line, because I own the triangle that was transferred to me from Ryan Elam, which is a son of Nelda Elam. And they weren't combined when this was made. And then Robin Armstrong, which was the daughter that was taking care of Nelda Elam when she passed away, owned that main section.
I see.
And they weren't combined together.
Yeah.
And it doesn't show it in that drawing or print.
Yeah, the dimension I don't think is critical to our
No,
decision.
I don't think
Yeah.
it is
Yeah,
critical.
and you
no.
can see in
And-
Google Earth that triangle exists, and it clearly looks like it's part of and contiguous to your property, so.
Right.
And the house, the former home was 28 by 58, and the new home would be 30 by 60, so it'd be basically the same size.
Okay.
So it's not anything really different, size-wise or difference-wise. It's basically the same thing.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. West. Any questions for Mr. West? We have a motion.
I move that docket number 2023-54-SE, a special exception petition to the property at 3785 South Indianapolis Road, be approved as presented and described based on the findings in a staff report and staff recommendations, submitted finding of fact, substantial compliance with the submitted site plan.
Thank you, Mr. Lake. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Henshaw. Any discussion at all? Further discussion?
Just that, I think the staff recommendation was a couple conditions that maybe could include in there just to assure that one was the setback requirements would adhere to the submitted site plan, and the new primary structure shall be no taller than 35 feet, which with their plans doesn't look like it gets close to that, but
Do you want to add those as an amendment to the motion?
would you be amenable to that?
I would. I would.
All right, yes. Add those two conditions to the motion.
Okay. Can we still get a second then?
Yes, second.
Okay. Everyone clear on the motion? Okay. All in favor? Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion is passed. Thank you. Your
Thank you.
petition is granted.
I'll send you the paperwork tomorrow, or maybe Friday.
All right, the next item on our agenda is docket number 2023-55-DSV. Is it Wing It? 40 East Ash Street in Zionsville, Indiana. development standards variance for an accessory building to exceed the maximum height in the urban village residential RV zoning district. Is Mr. Wing here this evening? Yeah, great, okay. Great, okay. Well, we'll start with the staff report and then you'll have your chance. Staff report on this.
Yes, ma'am. As you mentioned, this is a development standards variance request, specifically for section 194052, to allow an accessory building to exceed the 22 feet requirement in the RV zoning district. We got this, it's been a few weeks ago at this point when we were first approached about it. There's an existing garage. The new structure will be built utilizing that. You can see in the top left corner on the subject site, the yellow circle, that identifies where the new building is going. And to the right, I zoomed in as best I could. Sometimes these things get a little blurry, but you'll see that's also where it's going. Here is elevations of what the proposed structure will look like. The current garage is 18 by 22, which is 396 square feet and 22 feet tall. The proposed garage will be 28 by 28 and a little over 26 feet tall. In staff opinion, we don't think this would be injurious to the public health safety of the surrounding community. We don't think it'll negatively impact the surrounding property values. However, circling back to interpreting hardship, we think that strict use of the zoning in this case would not result in them not being able to use the property. We also feel that height is a design choice, which again cannot be a self-created hardship. And because of those two reasons, staff is issuing an unfavorable recommendation. Turn it back over to you. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Any questions for staff on this petition?
Is there a setback issue as well off the property line?
I don't believe so. I think it's 5. So that was the first question we had. If I go back to the yellow circle, first of all, I tried to get my lines to be a little smaller so we could actually see it, but that was not possible. So to answer your question, no, there's not a setback issue. This was presented to us. The big debate we had when we first saw this was whether or not that small line to the south would qualify as a side yard or as a front yard. The decision was made because it wasn't right up on the street that it's a side yard setback, making it 5 foot instead of 20.
Okay.
So both of those corners are good to go. We confirmed and checked that before we came here.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for staff on this petition? Okay, Mr. Wingett, if you and your contractor would like to come to the podium and please give your name and address for the record.
I'm Mike Effner, 40 East Ash, Zionsville. So really our goals here were to create a garage that was, a little more, larger for today's garage use, right? The garage as it existed could have fit 2 cars and that's it, right? No lawnmower, et cetera. And also now that we are in, I'll say, the post-COVID world of work from home, right? Giving me some office space so I don't have to work from the living room 4 days a week. As far as what we were really trying to do by using the dormer construction, we're trying to minimize the height. By putting it back where it was, we're trying to minimize the impact. Another big reason why we want to put it back where it was is the site was once the town dump. And we're not entirely sure what we're going to find, right, if we try to put it somewhere else.
Could you explain what that statement
Would you
means when you
elaborate
say
a
you're
bit
not
on that?
sure what you're going to find?
Sure,
Want to
sure.
dig someplace else?
Yeah.
Unsuitable soil.
So where this property is, right? You probably, if you're a golfer, you likely would have seen it from the 7th green of the municipal golf course. If you are not, you've probably never seen it, right? It's a little difficult to see from the street. And up until, I believe it was 58, right? It was the site of the town dump. I believe it in the red, and I think also some of the property next to it to the west.
You're not talking about a landfill, you're just talking about you're talking about a landfill for the town, or?
It's a dump, to my knowledge, right? As far as what we were able to find here, and also what was kind of relayed to us by the former property owner in front of us. Apparently, at some point in time in the 80s, right, there was a thought that they would build an apartment building on the site. And at least one of the reasons why they did not, right, was because it would have been, again, on the dump, and they weren't sure what they were going to find. Also, I don't think the backers who were there wanted to sell the driveway.
Questions for the petitioner? Other questions?
And
Pretty
in that-
brave. So you're going to be putting new footers in, correct? You're taking the old building down and putting new footers and digging into the old dump
So
or
this
landfill.
Jared Winjet with Winjet Homes. So this is one of the concerns that the homeowner has with this particular build. So we are using a substantial portion of the existing footprint of the existing detached garage because we feel that we can trust that the buildable area is stable there. We're basically saying that in terms of defining a potential hardship here, going back and seeing that the lot was actually the site of the town dump in the 50s, late 50s, makes it questionable at best as to where we might be able to go and build something else. So, on the face of it, you look at the lot and go, hey, you could probably build a larger structure that's shorter in height, and you've got some room to do that. The problem being that we're not quite sure what we might find if we start digging down to install footers. The existing foundation of the garage that is there is found to be stable. So we actually planned to pin a new foundation and footers to the existing and just expand it more so toward the house. So being that we really don't want to impact kind of the perceived open space of the lot more than we have to. There's a lot of structures back there that are somewhat close together and surrounding neighbors. And we really want to minimize the impact as much as possible while also dealing with the fact that we're not sure if we want to build somewhere else on the lot.
But I'm not following how that siting in that particular location impacts this decision about how tall the building will be.
So in order to add the space for an office space, instead of building out somewhere else on the lot where it's questionable, it makes more sense to build up. And with a 22-foot height restriction, it makes it difficult to do that when we're trying to put a second story on. Traditionally, with a two-story structure, we would absolutely exceed 22 feet, but we can get almost around that by doing a dormered structure. If that makes sense.
So is the existing home a ranch home, or is it a two-story?
It is.
It's a ranch, one-story,
Yep.
one-story home. Any other questions? Thoughts?
I have thoughts. I mean, normally I would be the one saying you can find a way to do it for 22 foot, but I've done projects on sites that have unsuitable soils, and while finances aren't a hardship, having your building slide over the hill is a hardship. Unsuitable soils are a hard thing to deal with, not just financially. They're just a hard thing long-term to deal with. And so for me, that makes building up a reasonable decision, a reasonable correction to that hardship. And 22 foot is a tough height to get a second story up there. If this were in a different spot downtown where the scale of this would impact houses around it, I may have a different opinion, but given where it's at and knowing that the site has some unbuildable characteristics to it based on what it used to be, I think this is a reasonable solution to give them the space that they could get, by right if they were to build out, just not knowing what the negative impact of that is because of what's underneath the soil. I feel like this is a reasonable request and response to that personally.
Other discussion?
Well, for our architect and the builder here, are there ways that the other portions of the lot could be tested for stability? I mean, we're speculating here. I don't disagree with anything you said. This is one of those things where it will not be out of place. It won't be even the height of many two-story homes. So, but we're also doing this all on speculation that there is unstable soil.
Yeah, you can certainly test it. The challenge with that is you test it with a bore. So you have a 4 or 6 inch bore hole that they bore down, they pull a core out, they test a sample. And in a scenario like this, you could have fill dirt that was compacted where your bore is, and you may have 2 feet next to it. You may find you've got a void underneath there where something is degraded over time and it just hasn't settled. And that's, unless you were to bore every 2 foot at $1,500 a bore, you're not, there's no guarantee that you're not going to run into that. And there are ways that you can, do piles or piers, geopiers, things like that you could do with the foundation. They're just not done typically residentially because they're extremely cost prohibitive. And and given the slope of this land, the way it goes down to the golf course, you may have 15 plus foot of rubbish that was put there at some point in time with 4 to 5 feet of dirt over top of it. So
there are also huge mature trees on that site, every place else. That would be difficult to not start really disturbing, which would disturb the view of the golf course. And this all runs down to Cross Branch. It's really close. So it's part of that natural corridor there that no matter what, he's limited.
As a long-term proposition, there would probably be value in having the soil tested, just to be sure there were no toxic materials that were put in that dump, for the long-term health of you and your family, just to be sure. And also to do whatever research you can to really know whether that was actually a dump, and if so, what types of things the town of Zionsville was dumping there for some period of time would be useful. That's just another topic. I'm sorry, but are we ready for a motion?
Sure.
Yeah.
I move the docket number 2023-55-DSV Development Standards Variance pursuant to section 194.052C for an accessory building to exceed the maximum height for the property at 40 East Ash Street be approved as presented and described based on the findings in the staff report, submitted finding of fact, and substantial compliance with the submitted site plan.
Thank you, Mr. Lake. Is there a second?
Before we do that, I guess, can we say, I think we need to address the elephant in the room, which is the unnecessary hardship, and that is that we feel that it has been substantiated, that there is reasonable cause to believe that it may not be safe to
Yeah,
place it
and-
elsewhere.
Yes, and my reason for approving the motion counter to staff's recommendation is that I do believe there is a hardship. I think that is that, as described to us, that it was a dump, has rubbish in it, whatever, at some point in time, that the uncertainty of what may happen, to that building, whether, an addition horizontally would settle over time, the building would potentially develop cracks and separate, that going vertical is a safer bet, and therefore that the hardship is kind of precipitating vertical versus horizontal.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Lake. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second the
All
motion.
right, thank you, Mr. Monday.
I was not opposed. I just wanted to make that clear.
Clarify.
That's
I think
fair.
that's good. Very, very good. All right, all in favor of the motion to approve, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Good luck with your project. Okay. Next item on the agenda is docket number 2023-56-DSV. Mr. BZA, if I'm pronouncing that properly, 110 North 3rd Street. Development standards variance for accessory structures in urban village residential zoning district that reduce the side yard setback, reduce the aggregate side yard setback, and exceed the lot coverage requirement. Can we have the staff report, please?
Yes, ma'am. I believe I saw Todd out there somewhere. There's Todd. So if I'm going to try to go through these. This is the one that's got what you're looking at. You have 5, but we have since reduced that down to 4, and I'll get into that. This is a development standards request. Property has an existing garage and an existing single-family residence. The request is specific to section 194052. Originally, you saw that there was a request for height, to address height. We have since been told that they no longer need a variance for height. They figured out a way to get that below or at 22 feet. So we're not going to be needing to address the height. However, we will need a variance to address the west side yard setback requirement. There is an existing deck on the single-family residence, legal non-conforming. It goes right up to the property line. So the request is to try to bring that into compliance. So we're asking to reduce the west side setback from what is required, which is 5, down to 0. Again, it's a pre-existing condition. Reduce the north side setback requirement. Again, pre-existing condition with an existing garage. Side yard setback requirement of 5 foot. Reduce it down to, I'm going to say 2 foot. I think there was 3 point something in there, but to keep the math easy, we'll say 2 feet. Reduce the aggregate side yard setback requirement. 15 feet is what is required by zoning ordinance. The request here is 3 foot 4 inches. Again, that is a result of the existing deck and the existing garage. So those 3 are existing conditions. We're trying to just rectify those while we're looking at the property. Request number 5 is the new condition that is being created as a result of the project. Exceed the lot coverage requirement. As of right now, zoning ordinance allows 35% with a 2% one-time exception. So combined would be 37%. The request is to go to 45%. Let me switch over here. You'll see in the pictures the covered patio on the top right corner, the proposed covered, I guess it's called a covered deck, not a patio, the covered deck, and the garage. And then the next slide, I don't know how well we can see that, but you'll see to the north is the existing deck, goes right up to the property line. you'll see to the right side of your screen the proposed garage. And then in the middle, on the, I guess that's the east side of the structure, the existing house, you'll see the proposed covered deck. So the 3 of the 4 that we have discussed are pre-existing conditions that we're trying to clean up. The request that's being created by this project is the lot coverage. And that's a result of expanding the existing garage and adding the proposed covered deck. And while I have the numbers in front of me, the existing garage is 20 by 22, 440 square feet. The proposed is 28 by 28 and 26 feet in height.
But you have told us that that's actually been reduced, correct?
Oh yeah, been reduced to 22.
Okay.
Those are my notes.
So
Sorry.
variance 1 goes away.
Variance 1 goes away. No need for height. The one to reduce the existing deck, side yard setback. Then there's one to address the existing garage encroachment from 5 down to 2. Then there is the aggregate of those 2 to reduce that from 15 to, I believe it was 3.4. And then the new one, which is to address the 35% lot coverage requirement. Their request is 45%. In staff opinion, to give that at the end, we are supportive of the existing conditions. We like to clean up issues when we have the opportunity. So we would like to be supportive of those. Unfortunately, the condition for lot coverage, again, circling back to previous statements, hardship, number 1, will strict application of the zoning ordinance result in the inability to use the property, right? We don't feel that's the case. Number 2, hardships cannot be self-created, and we feel like this would be a self-created issue. And so because of those 2, we cannot be favorable of the variance for the lot coverage, but we would be supportive of memorializing the existing conditions and cleaning up those issues. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Are there questions for staff?
Yeah, is there a reason, since they're replacing the garage, that we wouldn't make them slide it 3 foot further over so they don't have to have a variance on the back setback?
We could. I'm sure there is some sort of design reason, some sort of structural reason as to why. I'll let Todd speak to that. I think he would be better person to answer that.
All right.
So I'm curious because I see here that you have in the staff report that in 2016, a development standards variance was approved for a residential addition to exceed lot coverage and setbacks. But how did so many of these non-conforming, hugely borrowing on the setbacks, how did that happen? I mean, was it?
I wish I had a better answer than the one that I can give you, which is.
You don't know.
Well, I can speculate. For example, the term legal nonconforming, right? So, for example, the request for the deck, right? They're okay the way they are, right? They're legal nonconforming. If y'all deny the variance request, they're still going to be legal nonconforming with the deck. We're not going to go out there and make them knock their deck down, right? And because of that, maybe these issues weren't addressed the first go around. But again, I can't speculate to that, or I can only speculate to that. I don't have their notes as to why that was. I will say one of the things that was clearly identified was the exact percentage that was approved in 2016 for lot coverage. That was clearly identified numerically. They were approved for 37%. 37 was requested, 37% was approved. Reason why we're addressing it now, again, is because we're not just superseding that. We're going to 45%, I believe is the number,
right.
Or 40%, one of the two. But we're exceeding what was approved in 2016 for lot coverage.
So is it possible some of these, for example, that when the garage was built in 96, that it was built without any attention to what the ordinances were with regard to setbacks and so on?
You know,
Who knows?
anything's possible, I guess, but I can't speak to that. I'm sorry.
Right. Thank you. Other questions for staff?
One of the things that lot coverage in the village often creates water drainage problems. Is town or staff aware of any drainage problems in this area?
I have not been made aware of any. Obviously, yeah, long story short, to answer your question, I have not been made aware of that. Nobody's brought that to my attention.
And it doesn't appear in the project there's any special stormwater solution
No.
to account for that.
And for what it's worth, Todd did submit letters, I believe letters of support from the surrounding neighbors as well, or letters of interest. My suspicion would be, had there been major drainage issues, I would have heard from one of the neighbors specific to that. I haven't heard from them, so.
Okay, thank you.
I think in their narrative, if memory serves me well, they refer to the green spaces at the center of their lot that they say will be sufficient to absorb any water runoff from gutters, et cetera. I mean, specifically, that they don't visualize that there's a problem because essentially the edges are built out. So, all right, there are no further questions for staff. Is the architect here to address the petition? Would you give your name and address for the record, please?
Todd Rotman, address 320 West Hawthorne Street. With me is Danielle Pizzette, the homeowner. She's going to speak. Before she does, I want to address kind of the issues that came up. So the garage was built in 1997. We are not, we're using the existing garage. We're keeping the foundation, the stud walls. We're just taking off the roof trusses and putting on floor trusses and then putting a pitched roof on top of that. So we aren't changing the perimeter or the footprint of the garage other than to come out to the east another 8 feet 9 inches so that we can get a stair to the upstairs. Back when we got the variances in 2016, it was not brought up that there were these legal non-conforming uses. We just happen to have a lot better staff, working on it now. No offense to any past staff, but Jonathan is very thorough. And he pointed out these items and said we need to memorialize these. So they should have been memorialized in 2016. They just never were brought up. So we aren't changing any of the setbacks related to the garage. It just wasn't addressed at that time, even though the garage was there already.
Okay.
And I'll address the water drainage a little bit later on in my presentation. So here's Danielle to tell you a little bit about her experience in the village as well as her desires for this property.
Hi everyone, I'm Danielle Pizzette, current owner of 110 North 3rd Street in the village, along with my husband Pat. Todd will cover obviously more in depth about the project, but I wanted to start by sharing why we'd like to invest in our home in this way. Having been born and raised in California with no intent to ever leave, in 2019, just months after having our son, we moved our family to Indiana with 48 hours notice. I'd never set foot in Indiana, knew nobody in any direction. We have learned that you never know where life will take you, but sometimes it takes you to unexpected places that are exactly where you want to be. After 5 years in the village, we can't imagine living anywhere else. This magical little town is nothing we thought existed in the country today, and it's a dream to raise our son Luke here, and we truly feel we have a village raising him with us. Walking in here, Kathy, yeah. My mom has since moved to the village as well on Main Street, and we often discuss with some minor tweaks we could live in our home as we age. My husband's company is a large food production facility with a long-term lease, so Indiana has been a wonderful place for him to work as well, and they continue to invest in their business and don't have any plans of moving either. My point here is that we have roots and long-term dreams for our life here. Part of dreaming for us is often about the present day. The vision for this project is to create an outdoor space for our family to enjoy together. It is hot out there. We have no shade. We have fold-up chairs. So that's the purpose of what I call like the side porch, that we're really trying to mimic the design of the front porch, keeping that kind of aesthetic charm. But so we can be outside with our son and hang out out there and have somewhere to be. We love entertaining, barbecuing. We love watching sports and playing sports. My husband and I both played sports in college, so being outside. That was a big sell when I convinced him to buy this house. He's like, well, where are we going to play? I'm like, there's enough grass here. So when you say moving it 3 feet in and taking 3 feet of our backyard, please don't do that. It's very minimal as it is, but we're so happy here. So we see ourselves spending time out there, outdoors. You know, I have a track record of hosting village events. We had 100 people block the street for a Cinco de Mayo party. I probably put more permits in blocking streets here than anybody else. I help Aaron, now behind Kathy, with our block parties multiple times in the village. Last Christmas, I hosted 60 of our neighbors for dinner. I am the president of the farmers market, of the board of Isaiah 117 House. I'm heavily involved in the foster care system. So I say all that, you know, I have an abundance of hobbies. We are going to use every inch. We already use every inch of this house. And I just acknowledge to give you insight in how we use our home as a place to host and be together with our community. And now when I talk about if our home has what it takes to be our forever home, our priority is always Luke's childhood here. As Luke gets older, we deeply, deeply hope that our home is a place that he and his buddies want to hang out, whether that be in our hopeful back deck, you know, watching games, playing sports, or in the garage. We envision, this is a little kind of outside, but we envision our garage functioning like many people use their basements. Growing up in California, we did not have basements. The garage was where we hung out. And honestly, it was essential to my childhood. It was a place where kids could feel independent while mom has a watchful eye, ensuring that they're happy and safe. So that is my hope in this project. When we talked about, you know, being here forever and raising Luke, that was the one missing piece, was look, where are his and his buddies gonna hang out? They don't get in trouble, they feel independent, but I can kind of keep an eye on them. We also, and we'd never heard of a carriage house prior to so many being built on our block. But we do envision this extra space for when we welcome friends and family from all over the country, and I'll say it, my in-laws, who visit all over the country and stay with us, usually for a week or two at a time. And in longer cases, my ill father, who I'm the caretaker of. We love having people. We recognize people want to stay for a long time. I would love for them to have a space that's maybe not under the roof. We had 16 people staying under our roof for Christmas, all from California, and they didn't leave for 5 days because of the weather. So we really see this not just being a garage, it's a space for our family. I often say we're the caretakers of this home. It's not really ours. It's over 150 years old, and with the appropriate care, it will exist long after us. So this home is ours now, and I feel responsible for caring for it appropriately. So while respecting and honoring its history, you know, we've already invested in its restoration, always with the clear direction to keep its historical integrity while also updating it to work for our modern family, and this project was no different. Our hope is that these additions are thoughtful and appropriate, adding aesthetic value to our beautiful neighborhood. And that's why we hired Todd, because he's the master.
Great. So thank you. As an architect and a village resident, I'm always interested in accomplishing my clients' goals while enhancing the character of the village, and this project is an ideal example of that. As mentioned by Jonathan, we did remove one of our variances. We were able to reduce the height of the garage by doing dormers off to the side. There are 3 rather tall carriage houses on that alley already. I thought we were going to be in line with them. When I measured them, we were higher than all of them, and I was disappointed that I hadn't thought about, you know, the dormer situation, being able to bring the roof down. So we're very excited to get rid of that one and limit the garage to the 22-foot height and still be able to get the space that they need up above. And as mentioned by staff, the variances for the side yards are to memorialize existing conditions. As I mentioned, we're not moving the garage or changing any proximity to property lines from what are there now. So that leaves us with the lot coverage variance. As Daniel mentioned, there is no usable basement on this property. And so we're adding onto that garage so that it can be a garage, but also be a play place for the kids, an outdoor movie pavilion,
a garage band jam space, a sleepover hangout, and a crash pad for overnight guests. All of that is accomplished by just adding 8 feet 9 inches to the existing garage. The garage addition occurs where the current driveway is, so we're not even adding to the impermeable lot coverage of the property as it stands today. As mentioned earlier by Danielle, they're ultra involved in the village and frequently are host to groups of people. They definitely would enjoy the use of an outdoor entertainment space that's attached to the house so that it can be an extension of their living room. This will be located directly off the living room, and we're putting in some glass doors that will open the two spaces to each other. As she mentioned, it's to protect them from the hot sun. The afternoon sun kind of burns them, the yard, et cetera. And so having the ability to block that, as well as being able to be outside when it rains as well and not have your party be ruined. One thing that we haven't mentioned yet is there are also going to be drop-down screens around the perimeter of it, which will allow them to be free from the mosquitoes, which are rampant in the village. Anybody who lives in the village knows what I'm talking about, thanks to Eagle Creek and the low-lying areas. So this will also act as a screen porch for them, protecting their guests from mosquito bites. Similar to the garage, the deck is now a multifunctional space. It's got area for the TV, it's got area for the grill, it's got area for chairs, it's got areas for tables, and you can move furniture around and adjust it based on what you want to use it for on that particular day. Most importantly, by adding this, we're able to preserve the existing historic front porch as it is. There's no need to alter it by adding insect screens or adding onto it so that it's large enough for gatherings. And so that's the motivation, to leave that porch alone, add one that serves a different function. So we are requesting a 45% lot coverage because of the way that the ordinance currently calculates lot coverage. But it is worth noting that only 34% of that lot coverage is actual enclosed buildings. The 11% that is beyond that is decks, porches, and steps. So if the intent for the lot coverage requirements are to prevent overbuilding on a site so that the visual density is not too much, that is not the case here because we only have 34% of the lot coverage that actually has walls on it. If the intent of the lot coverage requirements is to prevent inappropriate design in the village, that is not the case here, as we're matching the heights, the roof pitches, the exterior materials, the window proportions, and exterior detailing of the existing home. Lastly, to address the water situation, if the intent of lot coverage in the village is to prevent water runoff into neighboring properties, that's not the case here because, as mentioned, we've got multiple decks and outdoor spaces that are actually pervious. They've got ample yard space in the direction of the water flow. The water flow flows to the east, which is towards the street, and our porch is on kind of the west end of it. And so we've got space for the water to run to the east from that new covered deck area. It's also worth mentioning that 3rd Street is the bottom of the hill. There is no place for this water to go other than into the street. And there was a major infrastructure improvement done in the last couple of years in completely changing out the storm sewer system along 3rd Street because it is the bottom of the hill. It is where all the water collects. And this property currently has 3 storm inlet drains around it, one on the north side and 2 on the east side. So any water that would happen to leave the property would not be more than it is now, but if it does, it gets collected into those inlets and taken out through the larger stormwater pipes that were installed. Also, as I mentioned, the garage addition sits on an already impervious area, so the garage is not adding to the impervious nature of the property. And then finally, it's worth noting that if you look at the site plan, and if you can scroll up a little bit so you can see the street, at the owner's expense in the past year, they worked with the town to replace the gravel along 3rd Street with pervious landscape blocks. They're landscape blocks that have openings. So it's mainly grass. It's grass with like a grid of pavement. So they've greatly improved the water absorption on town property with their own money already to address water concerns. We feel like they're being very proactive about handling water and its effect on the neighbors. So hardship, obviously is what we need to prove. So without a basement, without the ability to build up on the existing house because it's already 2 stories and it's only 3 bedrooms currently, without the ability to expand the garage, without getting the lot cover variance, this family will not have the ability to get the storage space, the car parking space, the children play space, or the protected outdoor gathering space that they need. They will also lose the ability to further invest in this home's current and future functionality and viability, as well as remove a generic non-contributing garage and improve this site with a continuous cohesive character across the entire site. So with this, we hope you appreciate our unique situation and thoughtful approach, and we'll approve these variances. So thank you.
I have one last comment.
Yep.
Sorry. When he says protection and insects, I will mention that I am deathly allergic to bees. So being outside, being outside is actually just a really scary kind of space for me. So when he talks about it being protective, it really does function for me to be able to feel safe being outside with my kid and all that. So for whatever it's worth, I will mention that as well.
Thank you. Any questions for the petitioner?
And just to be clear, I'm crying about being allergic to not the deck.
Any discussion then amongst the board?
Lot coverage is the one that I always struggle with. Stormwater is obviously a concern. Todd, as much as a covered deck doesn't have walls, it's the roof that contributes to the water, not the walls. So they are all, to my understanding, they're all covered, correct?
Not the deck on the west-hand side, just the front porch and then the new covered.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's different. From a design standpoint, I kind of pushed for it to be covered. Insects not getting in was the purpose.
Yeah, no, I meant the existing deck.
Right, and it's not, it's an open deck.
Okay.
It's right up against
Right, the one that goes right to the property
Okay.
line.
Gotcha. Yeah, so, I mean, that's one I struggle with. When I have felt like there was a solution stormwater-wise, I've suggested that people do that. I think it was good to point out that the owner has worked with the town to put the grass pavers in where the gravel was. Gravel is basically impervious anyway. It might as well be concrete or pavement from a percolation rate standpoint. So the grass pavers are definitely kind of a welcomed addition, and while they're kind of off property, they contribute to the water absorption on property. So.
Yeah, I would state that the square feet of that far exceeds the square feet that we're adding for the covered.
Yeah, it certainly looks like that on the plan, yeah. And I also don't think that from a lot coverage, we're doing anything scale-wise that is inappropriate.
What's under the existing deck? Is it plastic under the existing deck? Is it just gravel under the existing deck?
Just the dirt that was there originally.
It's just whatever's under.
And it, the water all goes down.
Okay.
Yeah, that deck's only that tall.
Yeah.
Has panels, so it functions as if it wasn't there essentially.
Yeah, I mean, your coverage now looks like more than a lot of the neighbors, at least from GIS I'm looking at.
I have to confess, I also struggle with,
Yeah.
given that there was already a variance that allowed for a 37%, you've already above what was permitted by the ordinance, and 45% is not just borrowing a little bit, that's a sizable overage for the existing ordinance, and I do believe that these ordinances exist for accumulation of things that you've cited, mass of buildings, open space, drainage, all of those things are, I think, part of the calculation. And for me, given especially the fact that that there are a lot of places in which this setbacks and so on have been ignored on this property. I mean, built right up to the property line with the existing deck, and the overhang even of the garage impinges on the setback. It's very hard for me to feel that it would be a good decision to have that lot coverage increased to 45%. That's just my view. I don't know what others might think.
I see the garage, right? You're going up, and there are a lot of carriage houses. I struggle with having a hardship for additional outdoor space when you're already over, right? There's a front porch. Screens could be added, right? I mean, it is possible. And so that hardship one is sticky to get that much additional lot coverage for porch for me. It just because a lot of those houses and the green space is valuable in the village. If everyone were at 45%, it would be a totally different place than it is now. And so that look and feel is still of value.
Yeah, I've always had a contention with the 35% lot coverage. The zoning ordinance that's currently in place doesn't really address the size of properties in the village. It's based on 8,000 square foot properties, so 35% coverage on an 8,000 square foot lot. Well, good luck finding that 8,000 square foot lot in the village. This lot is not 8,000 square feet. The historic lots were 5,000 square feet. I think 35% on an 8,000 lot is a disservice to the village, and to get hung up on, hey, we're 45 and it should be 35. When they were doing the new zoning ordinance, I proposed, 45% lot coverage to build a home for modern living, for families that are moving into the village, and to get a bedroom on the first floor. You just can't do that within that type of square feet. In regards to the 45%, there's typically two things that come up, like why is it 45%? It's a massing issue, right? Are the buildings being overbuilt and too big for the village? And the second is water drainage, right? Other than that, we've not, over the course of 13, 14 years, not found another reason for what is the impact of going over that 35%. In this case, only 34%, as I mentioned, have walls, right? So we're below that 35%. The other 11% is either completely open or it's a covered porch. We don't have that massing issue here that puts this out of context with its surrounding properties or out of context with the historic house. We're matching the details, we're matching slopes, we're matching heights, and it is outdoor space that's causing us to go over this amount. We don't want to tear off the existing front porch, right? So the other thing is water, right? And so we've already mentioned that this is the low point. This is where all the storm water goes to. There are 3 inlets right on the perimeter of this property already. That water storm system has been improved in the last couple of years, and the amount of impervious area that they have changed over to pervious far exceeds the amount that we are adding to their property. They have already taken a proactive approach with the town to improve water drainage on the street. And so it's not really fair to them to do that and then to say, well, you're going to cause a water problem. Well, no, they're not. They've actually improved it even with this additional work. So I don't see an issue from a density standpoint or from a water drainage standpoint on this project. So to get hung up on the 35% number, I don't think is relevant. Is this project appropriate? Will it hurt neighbors? Will it hurt the village in general? And we don't believe that it will. All of the neighbors around it support it. You should have 6 letters of support in your packets. There's not a single neighbor here to speak out against it. And you've got all the neighbors around it that support it.
So 2 things that come to mind for me, theoretically, you could screen in and enclose the porch that's not. However, to your previous comment, that porch drains water through right now. So if we ask you to do that as an alternative, we've created the same water problem that you would create if you put the addition on the back. Right?
Right.
Because we're taking what currently absorbs water as a deck, allows it to go through into the dirt. We put a roof over it, then we kick the water out.
The front porch has a roof.
Huh?
The front porch has a
The
roof.
front does, but not that side one. The other thing I think is an interesting point that you made. It is true that when that 35% was established, the intent was that was based off of an 8,000 square foot lot. And so you take a lot that's 5,000 square foot, and you clearly can't build a comparative house on that same size lot, and a comparative house that gets you, the space that a larger family would need. So I don't want to stretch too much, but I do think you could make a case that a hardship is that this lot is smaller than what the standard was that the 35% is based on. Therefore, trying to apply the 35% to a lot that is, 20% smaller at least, creates a scenario where the two don't align.
Do we open ourselves up, though, for every lot in the village that's under 8,000 square feet then is going to
We've
come in
already opened
and...
ourselves up to that in that we've, probably approved in the last 3 years, 20 of these that have had lot coverage issues, and some have, they've been for various reasons, and some people have come back and, we've had them do detailed stormwater solutions that have kind of met what we felt like the crux of that particular lot was, which may have been a stormwater issue. Not that we necessarily set precedent by what we do up here. That's not the intent. The intent is obviously that you look at each lot individually, but
Yeah,
I think the distinction, though, that I see is that it's the hardship. In some cases, we have said, yes, it was a hardship that in order to add a patio, you exceeded the 35% lot coverage, but it was gaining a patio that gave them outdoor access to use with chairs and tables and so forth. And this is I think it's more difficult to see the hardship that denial of this petition provides. It is more indoor space, it's more lot coverage, and in some of those cases where we have exceeded the 35%, the petitioner has gone to great expense to assure that the runoff from rainwater was not an issue for their neighbors. We haven't heard from remonstrators yet, but we have seen the letters that are supporting this from neighbors, but I'm having difficulty seeing the hardship in this one.
So maybe having mentioned remonstrators, I should ask if there are any remonstrators here with regard to this petition, or do we have anyone online who would like to speak? No one? Okay, further discussion?
I'd like to address the things that have been brought up. I agree with Chris that there is no such thing as a precedent with the BZA. It is unique lots. Staff and the town over the years have always said, do not compare this to another property. We will not let you compare this to another property. You'll notice I did not come here tonight and do an inventory of all the properties around it and showing what their lot coverage is with all of their patios and decks and things that have been added without permits, right? We're trying to do this in a legal manner. And so we are not setting a precedent because we are forced to look at every property's unique situation. In this unique situation, we do have a house that does not have a basement or any kind of a recreation space, which we are going to be able to create above the garage by just adding minimally onto the garage. And we'll be able to create an outdoor recreation space for them with the ability to have the screens on it, because I would believe that death by bee sting is a hardship. So these are unique situations for this property, for this owner, that we do feel demonstrates hardship in this situation.
But it's not a hardship that's imposed by the zoning ordinance alone. I don't see how B's seeing it, I mean, why it's awful, I feel for you. I don't see how that is a hardship caused by the zoning ordinance.
No.
I mean, if there's
Imposed
a different way that we could accomplish that outdoor space without needing the variance, we would do that.
But as much as, and discussing that the 35% was a measurement that was applicable to 8,000 square foot lots, and that this is a smaller lot, then there is an element that says it's a smaller lot, and so consequently you can do less on it than you can do on an 8,000 square foot lot. And so there's maybe that some of the places in the village are of a size that they are restrictive with regard to what a family may want to have in their home. And it can't be everything to everybody. And somebody who wants a lot of outdoor space, perhaps the village doesn't lend itself to that in some of the lots. So, I don't know, do we start bending to allow people to be able to change the parameters so that they can have the space outside, even though it is not permitted by the ordinance?
So what year was the house built?
1870, did I read?
Okay.
Something.
So we could suggest to.
The whole thing?
Yeah, so
Okay.
it's literally like two houses glued together. Yeah, one half is 155 years old, and then the other half is 5 years old, so it's 150 years different.
Yeah.
I didn't do the addition, but I purchased it as it is.
Yeah.
When was the garage built? Did you say?
97, we think.
97, okay.
House was built in 1870.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess, we could sit up here and suggest to them that if they want more outdoor space and they just demolish the entire house, it's over 30 years old, seriously, and build a basement, make your footprint a little smaller and you get your porch. But do we really want to tear down a house that's 18, whatever? I mean, that theoretically, if we're saying, look, on a smaller lot, we still want to enforce 35%, even though it wasn't meant for that small of a lot. You then have to make your footprint more compact, and you have to go down and you have to go up. And they can't really go up because of the scale, but they can go down because they don't have a basement. So, hey, you can tear this thing down and you can build it brand new, and we can lose the character of the existing house, just so you can get, 150 square foot or whatever it is of 200 square foot of outdoor space.
The 5-year-old part's on the back.
But still,
Yeah.
I mean, that's the remedy they have to get this space, is to literally tear the house down and put a basement in to get the needed space.
If a third porch is a hardship, so if not having a third porch is a hardship.
If having the outdoor space, but if having the outdoor space that you want, if they want it, then because there's no other mechanism for them to do it, other than ask for this variance, which it sounds like people aren't going to grant, then their only other option at this point, because they can't go out, is to go up or down, and they can't go up because it's already a two-story house, or is it one-story house, two-story house?
It's two-story.
Two-story house.
So we can't go up.
So then they have to go down.
So just a question, because you're talking about extending the garage by, I think I heard you say 8 feet.
8 foot 9 inches.
And what does that do to the lot? I mean, that's over an existing driveway?
Correct. It does not change the impervious lot coverage, but currently the way the zoning ordinance is written, driveways don't count against you.
Right.
So technically, we're actually making it better because we have downspouts that will drive that water to the yard, not onto the driveway, which slopes at about a 12-degree angle.
But the larger impact on the lot coverage is the covered deck. Am I right?
Yes. Yep.
Versus the garage.
Yeah. So we have.
What I'm hearing you say, if I'm computing properly, is that the garage space is very important because of the capacity to have a second story where your kids can play and your parents, your family can stay, and all kinds of things. So if you were rating which of those things is the more important to you of the two, would the garage extension be in first place and the covered deck be in second place. I mean, I don't know what the lot coverage would be with just the garage extension, but that would at least allow her to have the space that she's talking about for her kids.
Yeah.
The bee stings, that's something else. We'll have to deal with that another way, I think, but I'm just saying that that would be one possible compromise.
Yeah.
I don't know
And
whether
we
that's
are,
amenable.
we are willing to make additional commitments. They do currently have one rain barrel collecting rainwater. We could increase that to 2 or 3 rain barrels. We also could create a water garden in that section of yard where we were talking about for the collection of water. So between the street improvements they've done, rain barrels and a water garden, like I said, it far exceeds the amount of new impervious area that we're creating. And then secondly, we just talked, and they don't, with the new deck, they don't really need that deck on the west-hand side. So we'd make a commitment that if they were to pull a permit to do that deck off the north side, part of the commitment would be to remove that western deck. That would also get rid of that side yard setback issue there as well.
My challenge is still seeing the hardship. I just don't see it.
I butt in before a motion is
Sure.
made.
Mr. Smith?
If a motion is made, please do conditions, not commitments. Conditions.
All right, any further discussion, or are we ready for a motion, or?
If we deny, can they split it and come back?
So
Another option.
I would just say one more comment. Lot coverage in this instance is probably less about scale and more about rainwater. And if they would take the deck on the west side off, you've almost got a comparative square footage of new deck being added, and you're extending the garage over already impervious surface. So you're not affecting the impervious nature of the lot at all. And you wouldn't go to 45% anymore because you'd be pulling back 2, 3, 4, whatever percent, because you're losing the deck on the west. So they've not really created a problem worse than what exists today.
What is the square footage on that west deck? Do we know the square footage on that versus the proposed covered deck?
Yep. Yeah, it's listed on the site plan. If you can just scroll up there.
It's 19 by a,
Yeah, it's
19
211
by
square
11.
feet. 211 square feet.
It's right here.
Yeah, so it's
Yeah.
it's not 1 for 1, but it's pretty close.
Pretty close.
So if you're curious, if they were to remove the existing deck, not the proposed, but the existing, the 211, that would make lot coverage 42.5%. If they kept the existing deck and eliminated the proposed new deck, lot coverage would be 41.4%. So you're able to reduce lot coverage depending on which deck you address by 2 to 3%.
We have, so I think there's two things that I'd like to clarify as far as hardship. You know, every property is unique. They do not have a basement. They do not have a recreation space. So the hardship is they don't have an indoor place, you know, for their son and friends to play and for family to stay. They only have 3 bedrooms. We can't add another bedroom to the house. And so we've got the issue of visiting relatives that stay for long periods of time because they are from California. We also don't have a basement for rec space. So there's a hardship to this property. We can't build up. We can't, you know,
And just to reiterate on that, you know, the reason why we came up with this project was authentically, we sat and were like, could we see ourselves being here for the rest of our life? Like, okay, what is missing? And this is what we came up with. How are we we had 16 people over Christmas. We're never doing that again. How are we going to make this functional and work for us? Luke's getting bigger. Where are all his buddies going to be? I want him to be here, near, far enough. I mean, I recognize hardship, right? Like, there's real hardships in the world, so I want to be respectful of that word, but there's real purpose here. And, you know, when Luke is 10, not wanting to feel like we have to move out of the village that I've invested so much time and money into. That's the purpose of this, is so that we can have a home that works for us through those phases of life as well. So.
And we're willing to make another condition now that we have changed the roof line of the garage. We can change how we do the stair. We were adding that 8'9" so we could get a turn back stair. We now think we can get an L-shaped stair and still get 2 cars in the garage. So we would want to limit the garage addition to 4'8" instead of 8'9", which once again, you know, lowers the lot coverage a little bit more as well. So hopefully, you know, those are reasonable hardships and then reasonable conditions that actually improve not only the you know, visual density of the property, but also the water runoff.
Mr. Monday, does that help you with your?
No, I appreciate some of the steps and the fact that they're covering over impervious surface to begin with. It's that definition of hardship, and the next one that comes along, there's got to be a way then that serves as a hardship. And so I'm still having difficulty seeing this one as a true hardship as opposed to an inconvenience.
I mean, the nice thing about the village is that they're all different sizes, and there's small houses on smaller lots, bigger houses on bigger lots, and that's okay. That's the character of it, right? You're proposing that small lots should, because they're small, get to have a different rule than large lots just because you want them to, right? And so it is definition of hardship. It needs to be a hardship caused by the lot, not caused by your design preference, right?
Right.
It's a small lot. The houses are smaller on those.
And there are lots of lots in the village. We have 2 that are the same size this evening. It is not unusual that someone is on a very small lot and wants to do something more with what space is available there. And you know, we've heard before, this is 35% is an arbitrary rule, but it is a rule we live with. You know, it's a town ordinance. It's not one that we can just bend for any reason. That's why those stipulations are in place, that we need to look at those 3 points before we can approve. And hardship is one of them, and unnecessary hardship is one of them.
So are we ready for a motion on any of these variances?
Anyone that takes on this motion is needs to get a glass of water to conclude it.
If I might mention it, I mean, it is a unique property. We aren't negatively impacting the neighbors. We aren't negatively impacting the drainage. We aren't negative impacting the visual density of the property. So we talk about 35%, and I went on my little soapbox there, but for this individual project, we aren't hurting the character, the density of the village, even at this lot coverage. And you know,
I think we all realize that.
Yeah.
And
if hardship means they have to move after investing in all this, or if the hardship means that, you know, she has to run from bees, and the hardship is, you know, they don't have space for their family. I mean, those are hardships. Those
they
are real
not
hardships.
according to the rules we live by, Mr. Rodman.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I empathize with you. We've heard lots of reasons why people want to expand beyond the allowable limit, and I think we have, and we've certainly gone more than 45% in a few rare cases. But we have seen there is a hardship there which could be stated and believed, and personally, that's what I'm having trouble with, is seeing what that hardship is that would allow us to do this.
I would say it sounds to me as if you've been a real boon to the village, and for that, we're very grateful. Please don't think that we're not, because it's important for the civic life of the village. But there are many families who outgrow their houses. That's not an unusual thing when the space is not sufficient for the lifestyle they want to have, and it's always a matter of making a choice about whether you do the best you can where you are, or whether you make a decision to find something that's got more space for you.
So then I would argue we're protecting more than just my family. It's also the fabric of the village. I think that there's truly very few neighborhoods like the village in the country. And I think this constant turnover is part of the issue. And I'm sitting here saying, I'm willing to invest so that I can die in this home. And I think,
Ms. Chairman, I'm not sure that that's being picked up by the mic.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
Thank you.
I need to repeat myself. So I think there's so much about that I've learned about being a neighbor here that I think, you bring cookies, you connect, you meet, and I think having people who understand that, from the veterans, from the boards I'm on, who teach me how to do that, and then I learn and I am committed to that, I think that's valuable. I don't want to leave. I have no interest in it, and I want to, and I'm committed to the block parties and all of that, because I think that's really special. I think that is going away.
Well, I hope that you're wrong in that regard, but I appreciate your
Okay.
thoughts. So unless you have something new, I'd like to see us try to move along to get, unless you have more information that you'd like to share, more insights.
I just see in lack of consistency in determining hardship, Chairman. The last project was too tall. We're doing a carriage house where we got the height to work. They had to go up because they couldn't go out, right? We have to go out because we can't go up. But when we are going up, we're staying below. So what was their hardship? Why is, our hardship less than theirs? I think it's an inconsistent application of hardship in this case. They needed space, they need space.
Dozens of these cases, they're each one different. They each one have a different reason that has satisfied or not satisfied this group in terms of hardship. I know that each one is very personal to the petitioner, and we have to operate with a set of guidelines that are not necessarily personal to each individual. We have to make an interpretation. We do that. And we are criticized as a board often before approving lot coverage or other things in the village because we are allowing the village to be destroyed in the view of the remonstrator when we approve those things. So, and the inconsistency, I think that consistency should be part of what we were able to do, and I don't think it's been deviated from, at least to much extent. But again, it is an interpretation. When you have an unnecessary hardship, you've got to convince at least 3 people up here that it is an unnecessary hardship.
Right. And I am one of the board's strongest supporters because I do go to the neighborhood meetings and I do hear those complaints, and I do support the board. And obviously we're talking about this issue, but I support what you guys do. Have to respect your opinions. Hope you respect my ability to kind of argue my side fervently as well. So appreciate that.
Well, we would have been disappointed had you not done so. No worries.
And I'm presenting the next case, and I'm trying to be nice.
So are we at consensus, or Mr. Lake?
Yeah. So this is a procedural question. If it got denied, what is the ability to come back with a revised proposal? For instance, this is a 2-phase project. We're going for here's forever.
Yeah.
They're not going to build the deck now, right? But we don't want to come in piecemeal along the way, right? So they want to do the garage. Are we prohibited from coming back for a garage addition for another year if this gets denied?
My understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the property owner cannot submit the same proposal within 12 months.
Right. So if we had a different garage footprint with a different lot coverage request, that would be considered a different proposal?
In my opinion, yes.
Is another option to continue it for a month? I mean, a month may not be a sufficient amount of time.
The garage as it is, going up isn't a problem if we stay under it, but in order to do that, we need stairs. So then you have to make it bigger. Like you can't do one without the other. So then there's no problem with us going up. We can't do it without the stairs.
Well, it sounded as if he had managed to have the amount of distance that he needed in order to have the stairway in the garage.
By reducing the addition
But
to
it's still,
4'8".
Yeah, but it's still an addition.
It would still be over.
It's still an addition,
So
and
it's still
because,
under plot.
So what I'm hearing is like, we can't do anything to our garage in any capacity. There's no option, no matter how flexible I am to make it.
I mean, if the board would, the hardship is hard to get over. I mean, we can do a design where we come back and, hey, the garage is primary, that's what they want to do. We're only adding onto the garage to get a stair to get the space upstairs. We are willing to do that, continue it, modify it, come back, whatever. Can I get a feel for if that's a hardship that's worthwhile, like to get access to the second floor?
2 garages built on our house, and they had to come because all they needed was the stairs. So I'd love to be able to.
We may not be picking up what you're saying there unless you
Sorry.
get a little closer.
So we would love to have a second story. There's no problem as long as we're under the 22 feet. The problem is we don't have enough space to park our car and put a stairway in there. So if we came back and just made the smallest stairway legally allowed and it put us at 1% over, would that be something? I was trying to maximize storage because I got bikes and all that stuff. But if we need to just.
I would advise the board not to speculate on a future vote without actually having a formal petition in front of you.
Right.
Sorry, I'm new to this.
Thank you. That's Mr. Dale.
Yeah, I was just trying to determine if the continuance is worth it, or we just.
Sorry, I didn't understand you.
Oh, I was trying to get a feel for if a continuance is a waste of time or not, or if a revised proposal for what we're talking about would even be considered.
I think if it's continued, it could be reworked and presented in a month from now. Am I right?
Yeah, I don't know if they need to re-advertise.
Yeah.
That would be up to the board.
I mean, if the request is different in any manner.
It's a lesser request.
If it was different, but less of an ask, do they need to re-advertise, or if it's reduced, is that
I think
not needed?
I agree with you. Yeah.
Well, given that there are no negative remonstrators anyhow, and we have heard from, I think, 5 or 6 of the neighbors, so that those who would be noticed, I'm not sure what you'd accomplish if it had to be renoticed. I would say more importantly, though, is, at least in my mind, is the question of hardship, and are they coming back with something that's really the same, but with a little bit different twist, a deck removed or something? It's the hardship in my mind.
The hardship is I can't fly to the second story, right? I can't get up there. That's literally the hardship. Seriously, like, how do I get up there?
You have a petition in front of you right now.
Right.
And
We're looking at what we have.
So we'll request continuance to next month and see what we can come up with.
And that's up to you whether you want to grant the continuance.
What do your thoughts? Well, do you think it's? What would you say about a continuance? Any thoughts about that?
I think it gives them another month to see if they can come up with something. I'm fine with that. Again, my question is the hardship, and will that change in a month with what's brought back? But if they wish to have it, I'm fine with that personally.
If it's a continuance for something that they're asking only for something that you feel like you can show hardship for. A continuance for that?
You
Yeah,
thought?
so No, I'll make a motion. I move to continue docket number 2023-56-DSV until the March 6th meeting.
Is there a second? Any more discussion? All in favor of continuing this item to the next, our meeting in March? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So.
All right, thank you.
Sometimes they take longer, it's okay. It wasn't just.
All right, the next item on the agenda is docket number 2023-57-DSV, and that's N. Worley, 340 West Cedar Street in Zionsville, Development Standards Variance for residential addition that exceeds the lot coverage requirements in the urban village residential. Is Mr. Worley here? All right, great. So we'll start with the staff report.
Yes, ma'am. This is as you mentioned, a development standards variance request. Again, section 194052, specifically to address the maximum lot coverage of 35%. The request is to go from the 35 and 2% one-time credit of a combined 37% allowed to the request of 40%. So their max would be 37 with the one-time exception. Their request is to go to 40%. They will be, if you look at the current slide on the TV screen, you'll see the exterior of the house, what the structure actually looks like. The next slide, I think you can see it on that TV screen. If you can't, let me know and I'll zoom in. The next slide shows what is current versus what is proposed. The dotted line on the site plan shows the existing layout, the existing footprint. I guess not the dotted line, but the actual layout shows what is being proposed, right? So let me come over here. They are, to summarize the project, there have been various phases added to this home throughout the years. Summarizing, they're wanting to expand the existing garage and add a little bit of extra room. And then from the exterior standpoint, make it look more cohesive with the historic home of the primary structure, with the historic look of the primary structure. Staff position. We do not feel the request would be injurious to the public health, safety, and general welfare of the community. This request, in our opinion, will not adversely impact the surrounding properties. However, strict application of the zoning ordinance will not result in unnecessary hardship in the use of the property. If left in its current state, the property could still function as a single-family residence. In addition, hardship cannot be self-created. Because of our opinions to answer, or to question number 3, staff has to issue an unfavorable recommendation for this request. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Are there any questions for staff on this petition? If not, then Mr. Worley, if you would come to the podium, please, and give your name and address.
Hello, Todd Rotman with address 320 West Hawthorne Street. With me is the homeowner, Nick Worley. He's going to talk a little bit about background of this family's history with this house in the village.
Hello, my name is Nick Worley. I live at 340 West Cedar Street. I'll just start by explaining some detailed history about my grandfather, my great-grandfather specifically. His name was Robert E. Bender Sr. He lived in Zionsville through most of his life. He eventually retired and died in his home that he built at 515 West Cedar Street, there with my great-grandmother. He also built the adjoining cottage at 535 West Cedar. Through his working years, he invested thoroughly in the village and in Zionsville. He began with a purchase of 2 lots on 6th Street, which he sold for building 2 homes there. His first commercial property was at 76 South Main Street, and that housed his antique store, and as well as my grandparents lived in the apartment above the second floor during their early marriage years. Later, my great-grandfather purchased and vacated Metzger's lumberyard and transformed that into what's now known as Bender Square. He also built a few other buildings surrounding there on Elm Street, and one of those were specifically at that time for the Zionsville Times-Sentinel and concurrent designs with them. He was instrumental in preserving Zionsville history. When the town was thinking of demolishing 40 West Pine Street, he purchased that home, remodeled it, and is still there today. It's one of my kids' favorite homes in the village. They call it the Wishing Well House. He was also influential in preserving the brick street on Main when there was talks about paving that at one point. These are a few properties that Robert Bender was involved with through the years. Bender Square, as well as other commercial and residential properties in the village, are still family-owned and operated to this day. I would like to both preserve and renovate 340 West Cedar House that he also owned and has remained in my family for 4 generations. And I'd like to do that in a manner that he would approve and in his memory. Living in the village, through my childhood and into my adult years has both been a privilege and an honor for myself, my wife, and our growing family with 4 young children. Thank you.
So as Nick mentioned, obviously his family has been longtime Zionsville residents, including at this particular property where Nick and Laura have lived for 9 years themselves. They've just had their 4th child, and they are wanting more children. So the house currently only has 3 bedrooms, and thus the need to do a project on the house. My challenge then was to design an addition that met their long-term needs. As their family has proven, they stick around and try to avoid, and I also want to try to avoid doing any variances.
Mr. Rotman?
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Madam Chairman, I think I need to recuse myself from this. I did not recognize the name, but I do know some of the Bender family, and I've worked with his grandmother on some things, and I believe I should recuse myself.
Okay, is that appropriate?
All right. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mundy.
Thank you.
For the record, Mr. Mundy has recused himself for a conflict of interest, and he has left the room. Go ahead.
All right, great, thank you. So the first thing that we did in order to try to make this as efficient as possible is that we're going to remove the entire previous addition onto the original house to maximize the efficiency of what we do and try to minimize the footprint of what we're doing. The existing front porch and large entry foyer are larger than what is needed, but they're there. It's something that we have to work around. We do have the ability then with the addition to go up. So we are doing a 2-story addition. We are able to get 4 bedrooms on the upstairs for the kids, with 2 of the bedrooms being large enough that multiple kids will be able to share those rooms. And there is the thought of providing in-home live-in childcare at some point. And so by having those bedrooms, as well as the size of a couple of those bedrooms and 2 bathrooms up there, will allow for that as well. We were also able to get office space for Laura on the 2nd floor, which she needs privacy since she performs medical virtual visits when working from home, which she does about 50% of the time. The rest of the 2nd floor is built into the roof pitch of a 1-story addition where we were able to get a large play space for the kids. So then that leaves us with the need for a bedroom for Nick and Laura, which would be on the 1st floor. along with the standard common living spaces that you would find on a first floor. The bedroom on the first floor allows them to age in place. As we've noted, their family sticks around. They have a long history there. And they also do have family from other states with mobility issues that do visit them quite often. Obviously, there's a lot of family around. That does include a grandmother in a wheelchair. So this bedroom and full bath will be critical for those relatives being able to stay with Nick and Laura in their home. We combine the mudroom and the laundry room into one pass-through room to be as efficient as possible, yet provide the space needed for this large family. We've got a 2-car garage, which is standard for this area, and also provides space for bikes, toys, tools, in addition to the cars, so that cars are not being parked out on the street. That leaves us with the screen porch, which is necessary for their family to provide protection from mosquitoes, since their children have eczema conditions and are hypersensitive to mosquito bites. And as mentioned before, any of you that live in the village are well aware of the sheer quantity of mosquitoes that exist in the area. Earlier today or tonight, you should have received letters of support from 2 neighbors in the area that show their support for this project. I hope that you can see that we've been thoughtful in our design and have tried to limit any need for variances. I hope that we've shown that this longtime village family would have to forego some of their needs or move if variance is not granted. So thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions for the petitioner? Comments? Do we have any remonstrators here for this? Okay, if you would come up to the podium, please, and state your name and address for the record.
Thank you for your time. My name is Brian Hardesty. I currently reside at 320 West Cedar, which is just east of the property that the Worleys own. This has been a great experience for me. This is really not my thing, but I've learned a lot the last hour or so just listening to some of the comments and the views of village life, and I appreciate that experience. I just have a couple questions. We do have a concrete patio that's adjacent to the property line that does take on some water at times when there is a lot of rain. So I'm not sure, I'm not a irrigation specialist to know if there's going to be drainage issues because of this project that could contribute to additional water on my property. This is not my forever home. I've lived at the home for 9 years, and I'm trying to be a good steward of the property for the next people that choose to enjoy the home like we have. But that's one concern I wanted to bring up to see if that was an issue. I think there's some very good points made earlier that not all properties in the village are meant for all family lifestyles, and sometimes you outgrow things when you need to make significant changes to a property. And I appreciate what the Worleys are doing, but it's something that from a personal perspective, I'm not sure that one lot fits all the time. So those are my main comments, is I just want to make sure that there's not going to be any irrigation issues, and perhaps the architect can address that at some point in time.
Okay,
Thank
we'll
you.
ask for them, hear the rest of the remonstrators first, and then ask them to address it.
Kathy Lee, 80 North 3rd Street, just up the street from where these guys live, and across the street from the last petitioner. And hearing the last petitioner and their hardship with bee stings and things like that, and now hearing a screened-in porch is required because their children are allergic to mosquitoes, I'm having a really hard time working my way through that. It's the same kinds of issues. But the other thing is the height of the house, and I'm concerned based on the drawing that it's above the 22 feet, and they're going to propose a chimney even higher than that. So I want to make sure that that's appropriate. And again, the drainage issue, because 3rd Street is a weird street, and the water, like, we used to call it Lake Lee on Poplar. Now we sometimes get a little water there, and we're lucky in our cellar, we have a cistern. So we don't have a water problem because we have a well basically in our cellar. So there's definitely, I think, something to consider there with the water. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Let me clarify quickly. The 22-foot height is only for accessory structures, not the primary structure.
Oh,
Yes.
so what's the
So
height for a primary structure? I'm sorry. I did, like, kept
30 I
hearing
think it's
22 feet.
35 feet.
It's 35 feet, yes,
Oh.
for a primary structure.
And then how high is this? Because I couldn't tell based on the drawings. I'm not on, like, I was like 103 feet by what?
Give me 1 second to divide 132 by 12.
It's 32 foot 3 inches at its tallest point. Yeah.
So the south elevation I'm looking at to the roof is 132.3 inches.
Yeah, but finished floor is at 100, so
Finished floor is at
it's
100.
32 foot 3 inches.
Boom.
From
Oh, 30
finished
yeah,
floor.
that's not inches, I'm sorry. I was looking again. Didn't
Yeah,
recognize.
32 foot 3 inches from finished floor, and it's another 10 and a half inches down to grade. So you're just over 33 foot.
Okay, so it was hard for me, you know. I didn't know how to do the math.
Yeah.
I apologize.
I believe chimneys are excluded from that. They're allowed to stick above that.
But thank you for the opportunity.
All right, thank you for your comments. Yes?
I'm Andrea Hardesty, 320 West Cedar Street. One of the concerns that I had was the height of the roof and the closeness of our lots to each other, that it was going to create a situation where looking out the west side of my house, it was creating like a wall, like just the verticality, like I would be doing this to look at the sun out of my house. So that was a concern with the height that they were increasing, and I didn't really know if that was really necessary for that level of height to create the addition for the second story, if that was really necessary. Thank
All
you.
right, thank you. So would you care to address the drainage questions that have been raised?
I've got some height questions too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the first, in regards to the patio that's there, that is not a legal patio. It is within 5 feet of the property line, so any water that would, get onto it would be a result of that being an illegal patio. By law, we are not allowed to drain water onto other people's property, so it just won't happen. Furthermore, there's already an addition there. We're just replacing it. So that area along the patio already has a home in that location. We are open to adding rain barrels on downspouts on that side to further divert water, but by law, we aren't allowed to shed any more water onto their property than currently does, and we're not changing the fact that there's already a building there, so.
It sounds as if there's a chronic water issue based on what these neighbors have raised. And has that been your experience living there, that there's a chronic water problem, drainage problem?
Not to my knowledge. We had new gutters installed 5 years ago or less and haven't had any, to my knowledge, no.
And do those run off into your above ground, or what, do those run off into a storm sewer?
They run off above ground, yes.
May I clarify the water issue?
Certainly.
Yeah, I just want to clarify that the extent of water on the patio is not of significance all the time. They're just in pooling when there is heavy rain. So if there is going to be a drainage neutral situation, that's something that I don't feel will change my situation. But I just wanted to bring that to the attention because I wasn't sure if the drainage situation was going to change based on this proposal.
I see.
Chairman, the speaker should identify himself.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Again, I spoke a few moments ago. My name is Brian Hardesty, 320 West Cedar.
Thank you. So I'm looking at these photos that were enclosed in the packet, and I know that you're going to be demolishing some of the remodels that have already been done on this house, is that right?
The entire addition that was done to the original house.
Okay, and is that the garage section that
The
I'm?
garage and all the way up to that two-story portion of the house.
Okay, that entire section will be,
Anything you see that's one story is gone.
okay.
Are you making the two-story section taller, or is it staying as it is?
I think because we're matching the roof pitch, I think we're going up about 3 feet if you look at the elevation. Because we're matching the roof pitch with our addition, I think we go up a couple feet.
On the new section, on the remodeled section?
Yeah, on the new section, yeah. And we were, very sensitive to keep the two-story portion, while it does fit within the allowable height range, keeping that towards the front of the property. And then we very purposely step down the addition twice as you head north. And we also step in from the sides as well as we go to the north. So very purposely start stepping the house down.
Now, not that this house meets the lot coverage, but to play Larry, which is a shame that, anyway, you don't, for one of the remonstrators, you don't, unfortunately, you can't buy a view. If they are allowed to build to a certain height and a certain distance from a property line, that shouldn't be something that influences us, that they, as long as they have the right to do that. If it blocks a portion of your view, it's unfortunate, but not a disqualifying factor. Just so you understand.
For the portion of the area that they're allowed to cover.
Correct. Which is my caveat.
Yes. So that's how that works.
Yes. For what is allowed.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're back at the hardship question, it seems.
Yeah, and I guess I would go back and challenge a comment earlier that, at some point, somebody outgrows a house and they just have to go find a different house and a bigger house.
Well, no, I'd like to say that I didn't say it like that, excuse me.
No, not to that extent, but that if somebody outgrows a house, it's not our obligation to give them more space, it's their obligation to go find a house that better fits their size. And in this case, this house has been in this family for 4 generations. And I would hate to ask that family to go find a different house that's bigger and take it outside of the family. That to me seems not the right thing to do for Zionsville.
And I don't argue with that point, because I think many of these houses that are in the village, in order for them to be habitable today, need to have adjustments made to them. I completely agree and understand that. I think that in the previous petition, we were talking about something a bit different in that regard. And I think we won't revisit that, but I think when you're talking about adding 4 bedrooms for a growing family in a home that doesn't have those, I don't call those amenities, those are necessities. For this family to continue to use this home that's been in its family for 4 generations, I can understand that. I don't think that mandates that they go and get a bigger house somewhere. I didn't mean to imply that, if that's the way it came across.
It appears that there's a lot of just hard-packed gravel, and to Chris's point, that's basically pavement, right? Existing. Is some of that backyard going to be restored to a nice pervious turf so it offsets actually some of this?
Yeah, we purposely are pulling the garage off to the west to the alley, so we've got a very minimal drive there, and the entire backyard is going to be yard. By having the screen porch and the pervious patio off of it, that allows for the outdoor family living space with the grill and furniture type pieces, and allows the backyard to be fully landscaped.
Todd, it looks like you're making the garage go about 12 foot further out than it does today, roughly.
Roughly, I didn't put a dimension on it, yeah.
making sure that I'm understanding everything correctly. It was kind of to Jocelyn's comment about, you've got way more than 12 foot of hard packed gravel that, when you expand over it and hopefully get rid of the rest of it, because now you're entering the driveway from the side versus the back. You bring back area that will allow water to infiltrate in.
Yeah, you're increasing green space by pulling all that back, which is helpful. This footprint's not significantly different.
Other questions for the petitioner? Discussion?
You guys make this this is a slippery slope
It's a
stuff,
slippery
isn't it?
slope.
Yeah.
The next person will think 50% is reasonable, the next person will think 55 is reasonable in the village. Everyone wants the next, step up.
Well, I've personally been developing and designing homes in the village now for 14 years, and probably, a lot of the variances that have come through have been projects we work on, but 3 times or 4 times as many of that projects, we don't need the variance. We push to not do it, and every project is unique, and in this case, we pushed as much as we could and ended up with this, which is why we're here today. I don't think it sets any kind of a precedent. This is far below any other lot coverages that have been granted over the years, but that's irrelevant because it's a unique situation. So.
Sorry, did you have an additional comment? Please identify yourself again at the podium.
Kathy Lee, 80 North 3rd Street. I'm wondering, I heard very clearly that the village would prefer, this board would prefer multiple generations live in the house for a long time. And I realized your family's from here and you grew up in Zionsville. Those of us who unfortunately are transplants, I feel like I'm now being maligned because I don't have a multi-generational household. And so I'm really concerned that you will vote yes because of his family ties. And I think that shouldn't, I'm putting that on the record because I don't think that's fair. And I heard it very clearly from multiple of you. Oh, 5 generations, this is fantastic. We can't do this to them. It really makes me sad because my generation is 1. I bought a house in the fantastic village and I feel really, really lucky. He got to grow up here. He got to do all these things. His grandfather was Mr. Bender. Well, I didn't do that. So I just think it's a little unfair.
I think that we address every petitioner with in the same way. No one gets preference because of family history or whatever. It is remarkable that there are folks who live in the homes that were owned by their grandparents.
Well, I think it's remarkable, but my father was in the military. We moved. So you cannot say that it's like special because my family is as special as his and I live in the village too.
Okay.
And I want to have that on the record. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any more discussion? Are we ready for a motion?
Josh, you have anything? You've been pretty quiet on there.
Yeah, I'm quiet. I am. A lot going on in my head here. Yeah.
I don't see a site-specific caused hardship. It is a desire to have a bigger house. So I can't get over the hardship leap. Whether we agree with the percentage or not, it is the rule. So I need a hardship reason for that size and that percentage greater.
I mean,
Yeah,
these are 14 years I've been doing this. This is the first time these kinds of hardship questions have, come up in this manner. They are site-specific, but it's also, family-specific. And we have demonstrated that we have tried to accomplish everything in the most efficient manner possible. The hardship is that these, goals for this family cannot be accomplished within that 35%.
We are made to comply with the language of the ordinance. And the ordinance says that the strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance will result in an unnecessary hardship in the use of the property. So this is not something that we have manufactured ourselves. We are trying to obey the language of the ordinance in that regard. Is there any opportunity to decrease the amount of lot coverage in the plans that you've created? You build a slightly smaller structure.
Not to get below the 35%, just we're working with that existing front porch. We don't want to tear that off. We're working with that big entryway. We don't want to, it's got a beautiful staircase. We don't want to turn that into a bedroom or the kitchen, right? These are site-specific features of this property that we're trying to preserve that are causing us to go over the percentage. We could tear down the house. We could tear down that porch. Like, if you want to talk about site-specific hardship, we have a house we want to preserve. That is the hardship. And we are trying to work within that.
So I look too at the accessibility comment, when you're trying to age in place and needing to have one of everything on the floor that you can access. When you start to put the garage and the mudroom and the master suite down there, and then obviously I think Todd's point is, when you have a historic house that is a contributing house to the character of Zionsville, contributing from a historic term, not my preferential term, but from a historic term, to take away the features, internal or external, that make it contributing is, I think, is a hardship, because then you lose its contributing historical factors. And so to leave those contributing historical factors and get one of everything that somebody in a wheelchair would need to access on the first floor, you can't go up, you have to go out. And I do think they've done that in a fairly compact manner, and that's why we're not going from 35 or 37 up to 45, we're going to 40. So for me, the hardship is being able to get the accessibility that is needed on this floor and have one of everything that needs to be used.
Other comments? Board members, are we ready to?
I can go with that. I like that line of logic, Chris.
There'd be a contingency to restore the site to a higher price. At least to get a good balance on the green space, then you're not technically losing
I'm sorry,
that
can you
piece.
repeat again? The contingency would be with regard to the
If we're all
gravel?
amenable to that you're committing to restore the green space and the soil and get that to be nice.
I think
Make it a condition to.
Yes.
I think an appropriate condition would be that the property from the northern edge of the addition to the northern property line would have no impervious surfaces as part of the
To be restored to a nice topsoil green space condition,
Right.
since there were concerns about runoff, that would improve that.
So that would mean that you would not be back looking for a patio, for example, or
Right,
some
we-
other
Not
outdoor
looking for-
feature.
kind of like the last one, we were trying to go for everything at once and not piecemeal these and show back up and try to fool anybody into future plans like we have seen other petitioners do.
Are we ready to make a motion?
Sure. I move the docket number 2023-57-DSV Development Standards Variance pursuant to section 194.052 for accessory structures that exceeds the lot coverage requirements located at 340 West Cedar Street be approved and as presented and described Based on the findings in the staff report, the submitted findings of fact, substantial compliance with the submitted site plan, and a condition that all property north of the north edge of the garage be restored to a vegetated pervious state on the completion of the project.
Thank you, Mr. Lake. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Foote. Are we ready? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? You're approved.
Thank you. Appreciate your time tonight. All of the time tonight. Appreciate it.
Thank you. So I think we should ask Mr. Monday to come back.
I'll go get him.
Thank you, Janice.
Come back in the room.
We should just have one more, right?
We have one more. Welcome back, Mr. Monday.
Good point in a big historic porch. It's huge.
The next item on the agenda is docket number 2023-58-DSV, Montessori Foundation of Indianapolis, a development standards variance to permit for an existing driveway that encroaches on into the required Michigan Road overlay and 30-foot green belt in the urban neighborhood zoning district. Is a representative here for Montessori? Great, all right. So if we have the staff report, please.
Yes, ma'am. Hopefully this is a relatively straightforward request. As you can see in the slide on the screen, this is a pre-existing condition. Again, it's a development standards variance and a vacant existing office space that is being converted into a school. Part of that review process, our team identified this, the existing parking lot and a few parking spaces and driveways encroached into the required 30-foot greenway or green belt is what we call it, green belt for the Michigan Road overlay. And so this petition is to address that. Again, existing condition, we're just trying to correct any issues we see as we review these projects. So that's the request, is to memorialize an existing condition, the encroachment into the 30-foot green belt. So with that being said, staff does not think the request will be injurious to the public health, safety, general welfare of the community. The request will not adversely impact the surrounding properties, and the request strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance will result in unnecessary hardship. Because of that, we are supportive of this request.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Are there questions for staff?
You can see the green belt is identified as the red dotted line on the site plan, and obviously the existing parking lot encroaches well into that.
That's been there since the building was finished?
It has been there. The petitioners may be able to speak more to the exact dates, but it has been there for a minute, a very long time. For a very long time.
And that building was probably built in 2008, 10, something like that.
Yeah.
And it was probably there originally, but I think Michigan Road was expanded slightly over that duration as well. It wasn't quite as wide, so.
So if the petitioner would like to come to the podium and identify himself, please, with name and address.
My name is Ben Hool, Landworks Engineering, 958 East Washington Street, Indianapolis, Indiana. I'm the civil engineer for the project and had worked with Janice and Roger through these issues. The building itself was originally constructed, I believe, probably around 1970, we believe. Oh, wow. And then there was an extension that was added on the back probably in the 90s, 1990s. When that extension was added on, there was also some work that was done at that time along Michigan Road, and that's when they added the parking lot in the back and they added the drive kind of around at that time too. All of that was when this was county. It was prior to being part of Zionsville.
Anything else that we need to know?
Good evening, Attorney John Cross, address 13 North State Street, Suite 241, Greenfield, Indiana 46140. Representing the petitioner, who is also here by Vivian Kane and attends today, the head of the Montessori Foundation that will be located at the school. We were last in front of this board June 2023 for the variance of use, which was approved. So as stated by staff, since then the planning process has been going underway when the Greenbelt issue was discovered. So important to point out that there are no development plans planned for inside the Greenbelt area. In fact, there will be an expansion to the existing walk that will add an approximate 3 feet to it. Landscaping guidelines should be met there as well. So here what we're trying to do is just preserve the property as it has been constructed since the 70s and expanded in the 2000s or so. So you can see inside the Greenbelt, there's some parking spaces that are inside of it, as well as the thorough road. The south side of the property is on the right-hand side of the screen when you're looking at it. So that thorough road that connects to the south side parking spots, that's necessary to go back there as well, which I also believe it adds some necessary space, because the plan for school drop-off here is to loop around the side of the portion of the site plan to the left. So keeping the drive there as well will just add additional space. So compliance will be a hardship, because they will lose necessary access to the parking spaces, which will be needed for the school operations, and will also remove additional space for the school drop-off pickup for the children as well. So we do have a unnecessary hardship here for having to comply with the ordinance standards for the Greenbelt, and especially when there's no sort of development plans inside that development to inside the Greenbelt area as well. So if we were trying to develop it, then I think that would be a different issue. But here we're just trying to establish that everything is as is and request the variance for it. So with staff support, we would request approval of the same.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the petitioner? Ready for a motion?
Fine. I move that docket number 2023-58-DSV Development Standards Variance pursuant to section 194.078K to permit for an existing driveway that encroaches into the required Michigan Road overlay 30-foot greenbelt on the property located at 11712 North Michigan Road, Zionsville, be approved as presented and described based on the findings in the staff report and staff recommendations. Submitted finding of fact, substantial compliance with the submitted site plan.
Thank you, Ms. Blake. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Great, it's been approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so that takes us through our agenda to the frequently asked questions about continuances.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I can be pretty brief. You had a continuance issue tonight in your meeting. In your rules of procedure under Roman 5, the conduct of the public hearings, continuances are found under section 4. The automatic continuances are not going to be a board issue, because those are, if they're timely filed in writing, then that's a staff issue, and those are automatic. Everything else is discretionary to the board, and your standard is good cause, and just good old common sense. Good cause is just be fair. If you have a room full of remonstrators and a petitioner wants to back out and get a continuance, then you can just try to be fair, balance the inconvenience to all the remonstrators to have to come back. But if it's a legitimate issue, if there's new information, or it looks like the 30 remonstrators who are here versus the lonely petitioner, and a continuance might allow them to get together and broker a peace, then just use good old-fashioned Zionsville Hoosier common sense and decide whether there's good cause. In your rule, it says neither petitioner nor remonstrator shall be granted more than 2 continuance requests, unless, we don't want to get into more difficult definitions of hardship, but unless a significant hardship exists. And again, it just falls back, it's discretionary. So it's a board decision, and just try to be fair. A petitioner can move for a continuance. A remonstrator, an objector, can get up and ask for a continuance. But if you receive, where I would recommend that you always exercise your discretion in favor of the continuance request, is if staff has an issue. Something comes up in a meeting and staff says, hey, I think we need to continue this, then your staff works really hard and knows more about these cases than the petitioners or the remonstrators. So if staff, it's your discretion, it's your decision, 3 votes, but I would recommend that you always strongly consider a staff's request for a continuance in a meeting. So that's continuances in a nutshell.
Is the petitioner entitled to a continuance?
If they timely file it in writing, they're entitled to a continuance.
So the discussion we had tonight is they were starting to think about modifying their petition in some way and changing the parameters. Was that appropriate? That we suggested?
Yeah, Mr. Dale was absolutely correct. Engaging in hypotheticals or what ifs is.
No.
I wouldn't entertain that. Wouldn't recommend that.
No.
Hey, if we move for a continuance, do you think you'll grant it when we come back? That's not appropriate. It's just, but if I think Mr. Is it Rotman or Rotterman? He was, I think he was just trying to think on his feet on what he could come back and change.
In that case, though, were they entitled to a continuance upon request, or did the board have discretion?
Any request in a meeting is discretionary, just on my reading of your rule. But again, just first request is err on the side of being more fair, especially if there's not a large room of people that might be inconvenienced by having to come back.
Thank you.
And then just one more within that discretion is by statute, if a hearing is continued in an open meeting where the next date can be stated in public, you're not required to renotice. But again, staff may weigh in and have reasons that they might suggest that, if you grant the continuance, this is a situation where you may grant the continuance, but require the petitioner to go through the notice process again. That's just case sensitive. You'll know it when you see it.
I have a question, not relative to this, but it was relative to the training that Dan did a week or so ago. Question was, can we go out to the site and take a look at the site for a petition that's on the agenda? And the answer was no.
That's correct.
And I'm not challenging that, but just what's the logic behind that?
Well, it's because your role as members of a Board of Zoning Appeals is quasi-judicial, and your decision is limited to what happens in this room. In courts of law, our judges don't go to scenes and view crime scenes or view where accidents happen, or so it's based on the nature of this body, and because it's quasi-judicial.
And the information that comes to us is what
you have to base your decision on. Now, you're human beings and you live in the community where you're deciding these cases, and you may know what a lot looks like, but that's all valid, but it's personal investigations is it's just you're supposed to make your decisions based upon the evidence that's presented.
We were instructed, though, that if there's something we want to see, a picture that, the 4 that are presented don't show the right angle, then we can ask staff to either go get that or ask the petitioner to provide that.
Yes.
If we feel like it would be beneficial.
Right.
And then we would share that with the entire board,
Yeah.
so everybody's privileged to the same information.
And the pictures are very helpful. I noticed that particularly in the one particular petition, where being able to see was very helpful to me. The schematics and the Google Maps is helpful, but the actual picture of the particular house in question was very helpful to me, so.
Well, and we had one petitioner this evening whose house they've purposely blurred on Google Earth so you could not see it from street view, which as an architect is frustrating as an architect.
It's in
That's how we understand things.
Boone County's got you though.
Yeah. So that it helps to get pictures sometimes for that purpose.
So we do have another findings of fact for docket number 2023-38-DSB.
Yes, ma'am. So this is another petition from January's meeting. If you remember, he came forward with, I believe it was 4 variance requests under one docket. And in the past, we've signed the petitioner's finding of fact. Well, I believe it was Chris that made the motion to deny the height, and then we approved the other 3. And so we ran into a situation where we had one petitioner's finding of fact, but we had denied one, so we needed more than 1 page to sign. And so what we've done with this document is we've split those requests into 4 individual finding of fact documents. And so the request, I guess, if you're asking that, is to give these documents to the board so y'all can all sign and execute the findings. Is that good?
Yes.
Do I don't sign this, do I, since I didn't, was not on the board was not
he would
appointed
not sign.
last month?
I'm going to refer to legal.
No.
All right.
I assume I'm not, but
All right, well, I will give you the documents.
I won't sign these.
Just pass them.
Just pass them.
There you are.
Okay, and so the last item on the agenda is the comprehensive plan. Do you have an update or?
Yes, right now we are in a stage of the process where we are asking, we've advertised the project for requests for qualifications. So we're asking consultants who might be interested in the work to submit qualifications to us. And then at staff level, we will have a group of staff and the administration to, let's say we get 12, submittals. We'll sort through those, and I think that we'll probably perhaps have a short list of maybe 3 or so out of all the submittals we get. And then we'll inform the Planning Commission and the Town Council that staff has reviewed these and that we recommend these top 3 for further consideration by the Planning Commission and Town Council. Right now, with the administration, we're conceptualizing this process where we would have a joint session of the Planning Commission and Town Council to interview the 3 consultants. So, theoretically, then each of the consultants would present their proposal and budget to the Planning Commission and Town Council in a joint session. And all 3 of those consultants, if there were 3, would present, and there'd be a Q&A, and then that same process for all 3. There are 3 of those consultants, and then the Planning Commission and Town Council would decide on which of those 3 consultants rose to the top, and it'd be a joint decision of the Planning Commission and Town Council to choose that consultant. That would be about the middle of February, middle of March, when we have that selection of the consultant. And from there on, of course, just signing the contract and then moving forward. So I just want to bring you up to speed on where we are with the comprehensive plan.
Oh, much appreciated. There's been a lot of interest in that
Yes.
in the community.
It's
So
fun. I have one more question for you, and Janice, this is something you and I talked about whether or not the public notice information is in the packets, and whether the board wants that information.
Right, so staff was curious to know whether or not the board would be accepting of us not including the notice form itself, the affidavit, the list of the joiners, the newspaper clipping. Those are our responsibility to ensure that the petitioner is noticed properly. So if the board is accepting of not having that included in your packet, we'd be happy to accommodate that.
I would say please take it out.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's fine.
I mean, you would let us know when one doesn't come back in.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, you wouldn't be hearing them.
It's one less thing I have to print or anything like that.
Okay, very
That would be
good.
great.
Thanks for bringing that up,
Thank you.
Mike.
Okay.
No further business, then we stand adjourned until March. Good meeting. This is a hard job.
You did it perfectly.
No, I know better.
I think y'all did a great job. Yeah.
Gosh.
Thank you.
Interesting.
Oh.